to Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of her advocacy, real leadership was born in May hardship or hardest in 24 hours. Now she's helping others to fix their problem. And the author of the book, Fix the Leadership Problem, none other than Miss Sheyna James. Welcome,
Hi, thanks, Daniel.
welcome. Yes, welcome, Miss Shayna. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes. So I'm Sheyna James with Sheyna James Consulting, and I help fix the leadership problem in businesses and organizations. I help people to develop their people so that they can develop their profits and productivity. I've been coaching and speaking and training for over 30 years and have worked with over 30,000 people where I've coached or trained them. And that's where this book has been birthed out of those experiences.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Shayna. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. Fix the leadership problem. What is all about?
Yeah, so this book is really birthed out of my own story where I started it was a normal Sunday morning and my husband who was a pastor uh I woke up to the sounds of giggling and laughter in my bed and I looked over and I saw my 3-year-old and my husband just exchanging Eskimo kisses. And they
Mm-hmm.
were laughing and playing and I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, I am such a lucky woman." And he told me, he said, "Hun, you stay here and get some rest. I'm going to take the kids to church." So I stayed behind. And when I got to church that day, my husband, who was the pastor, preached a powerful message. And at the end of the service, he said, "I feel like I have to throw up. I don't feel really good." I said, "Well, go take care of yourself. I'll come back and I'll check on you." And when I came back, I found my husband about 10 minutes later, lying on the ground, completely unconscious. We called 911. They rushed him to the hospital, and as soon as I arrived, a doctor pulled me into the room and he said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hurd, but we've done all that we can, but your husband has passed away." And in that moment, it was like a ton of bricks dropped on me. That wasn't just his passing. Within a 24-hour period, I became a widow, a mother of 2 little boys. I became a CEO, and I also became a senior pastor. And what I discovered in that is that many of us have been given roles of leadership, whether we asked for them or not, and we're not prepared because I didn't feel prepared. So I went on this journey to discover what it means to be a leader. How do I grow? How do I develop my organizations? And that has made all of the difference. It's transformed my life and it's transformed the lives of, as I said, over 30,000 people that I've had the privilege of working with. So this book is birthed out of a really challenging situation where I got thrown into leadership and had to figure out how to stop paying the high price of poor leadership.
And again, thank you so much for sharing to the world, Miss Shayna. The title focuses on the high price of poor leadership. Beyond lost profit and high turnover, what are the some of the less obvious, more human costs that organizations and families pay?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times, we can quantify what's happening in a business. When there's poor leadership, you have people don't leave companies. They often leave people. They don't like their managers, so they walk away. We can see how maybe it affects your customers or your bottom line. But we often don't see the price that poor leadership is paying in our homes. For me, I was struggling. I was doing the best that I could. I had a lot going on, but I was mean and I was angry because I was overworked. And as a single mom, my kids felt the heart they felt the brunt of the stress that I was under. And all I could say to myself was, I'm not giving them the best version of myself. So because I wasn't leading well at work, I then came home and I wasn't leading well. And my children, I believe, suffered because I didn't know what I was doing really. And when I began to learn about things like delegation, like I didn't realize how much I thought when I became the boss and the CEO that it was all on me, so I had to do everything. That was stressing me out so much so that when I got home, I was overwhelmed because I had been doing everything all day and I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help at work. I didn't know how to ask for help at home. So I had to learn that good leadership is not you doing everything. Good leadership is you getting things done. And whether that is through other people or hiring or whatever, you need to do it because it allows you to be more of a visionary to move the organization forward. So that's how it affected my family and that's how it affected my job. I mean, I was losing staff. I was People were quitting. They didn't like me, and I was like, "This is rough. This is hard," you know? So I had to learn how to be a better leader.
Mhm. To be a leader is so hard, people, because well, it's not to please everybody, but you need to be firm as a leader. Is a poor leader often a symptom of a deeper problem, or is it the core disease itself? How does your book help diagnose the root cause?
Yeah, so I say this in my book that it's very difficult to change anything if you don't face it. So, in order to fix the leadership problem, you have to face what's really going on. So, I've created an assessment that is in a book that you can take to help you diagnose exactly where are you struggling in leadership, because leadership is a really broad kind of conversation, right? Are you struggling with communication? Are you struggling with emotional intelligence? Is If you've got that down, good. Is your challenge that, you don't have an authentic voice and you don't have confidence, or you're dealing with imposter syndrome, or you're struggling to be innovative or dealing with change? All of that is available for you to assess, and then once you assess it, then you're able to start addressing it. And that's the real catch, right? When you start dealing with any problem, you have to assess exactly where it's messed up. And I'll say this about leadership, because I don't think that anybody has classes for you in elementary school on how to be a better leader. It's
Yes.
not something that we've naturally been taught. There are people who possess natural gifts. I will say this, that even if you have natural gifts of leadership or you don't, leadership is a skill. And like any other skill, it can be developed. And so by addressing those gaps in your leadership, it allows you to then focus on those gaps so that you can then grow your skill of leadership. So the assessment's available, and I use my 4 pillars, which is a framework that I've developed called RAIR, RAIR. And based upon those 4 pillars of being relational, authentic, innovative, and resilient, we assess where are you in your leadership skills so that you can determine what we need to do to fix. And then in the book, we focus on fixes for each of those areas.
Interesting, Ms. Shayna. You frame the problem at work and in life. Does fixing the leadership problem always start with how or with fixing how we lead ourselves? What does the internal work look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every person, the internal work that's needed. As I said, it's depending upon your challenge, which area or which gap you have a need to work in. For instance, if a lot of people think they're great communicators, you can think you're a great communicator, but do the people around you think you're a great communicator? So there are tools that I use in my consulting business, like doing assessments, like a 360 assessment, where we ask everybody around you, like, how you doing? And maybe you can't pay for an assessment. So how do you do that? Well, what do you do is if it's your family, you go and you ask your family, how am I doing as your parent? How am I doing as your wife? In fact, those were questions that I asked my children often. At least once a month, I would say to them, hey, we can have an open, honest conversation. You can say whatever you want to say, but tell me, how are we doing as a family? How am I doing as your mom? And there were times when they would say things like, "You don't play with me enough. You don't we don't have fun together." And I would take that and I would have to make adjustments. So if it's a communication issue, maybe it's having that communication with the people that are around you, asking them what they think. If it is an innovation issue, maybe it's challenging yourself to step back and say, what could I do differently that can really transform or solve this problem? So, in the book, I provide a lot of different steps and resources for you to not only assess, but then to begin to get to work on the problem that you might be facing. And you're right, it is leading yourself. And that the challenge is you leading yourself to do the work. That's the first start. It's not just going, okay, I have to lead better. It's I have to lead myself to be consistent, to be disciplined, to ask the hard questions, to show up, to read books, to listen to podcasts, to grow myself. And that's all a part of leading yourself.
On solutions and frameworks, Miss Shayna, if you could mandate one change in every leader's daily routine or mindset to immediately reduce the price others pay, what would it be?
I would say 15 minutes. Let me explain. If you could work on growing your leadership 15 minutes a day. There are studies that have shown that if you study something or work on something, a skill for 15 minutes a day, at the end of the year, you're better at that particular skill than 90% of the people in the world. And what does that mean? For 15 minutes a day, maybe you pick up a book. Maybe you watch a YouTube video on leadership. Maybe you decide you're going to practice how you provide feedback to your family or your children. But for 15 minutes a day, you're going to focus on how do I grow myself in leadership? If you can do that, if I think if every person could do that, we're going to transform what leadership really looks like all over the world. Because the more you grow yourself, the more you're able to grow your organization, the more you're able to grow your family.
Definitely. And is fixing leadership about applying new tools and techniques, or is it a fundamental identity transformation? And how does your book guide someone through that shift?
It's a little bit of both, honestly. There's a mindset shift that has to happen, but then there's also skills that you have to learn and develop. So for instance, I think the biggest shift for people with leadership is really beginning to see that I don't have to be like anybody else. My leadership style and my personality style might not be like the person that I think is the greatest leader in the world. And the question is how do I walk and be authentic to who I am as a leader and still lead with compassion and heart and vision and drive and all of the other things that we need. And in the book, I help you to identify your authentic self. That is the second part or the second pillar of my rare framework, which is authenticity. I teach you about what does it look like? How do you become more authentic to who you are? Discovering personality types and how that impacts your leadership style. And then being okay. I really want people to be okay with being who they are, but I also don't want them to be okay with staying the way that they are. And this is why, I love your podcast and the power of books is so amazing because, reading one book on one thing can open your eyes to really a whole new world of how you can be or how you should be or who you can become. And so I really believe that if you can authentically understand who you are and then begin to discover more about who you are and yourself as you read more books,
Hmm.
then you can be better at leading others and you can lead from a place of authenticity. And this is the reason why I say that is because people nowadays, they can spot fake real quick.
Yes.
Nobody wants fake people. People want leaders who are authentic. If I am a very quiet and reserved person and I'm trying to force myself to have conversation, you're going to feel it. And for me, I'm a very talkative person, right? And when I get quiet, people around me go, "What's wrong?" Because that's not necessarily what's natural for me. But we all learn and grow in our personality types, right? And we all learn how to become better leaders by understanding who we are better.
A common trait of a poor leader is defensiveness. What is your practical framework for leaders to truly seek, hear, and act on a critical feedback without feeling threatened?
Wow, Daniel, that's an amazing question. Well, definitely being defensive isn't the response you want, right? I think you
Yes.
have to you have to take the posture of listening, right?
Hmm.
And I literally just had this conversation over Thanksgiving last week.
Uh-huh.
Um, I didn't realize it, but I think I had said something that maybe hurt one of my children's feelings, but he's not the kind of person to say, "Mom, you hurt me." But he did have a reaction that was a little off-putting from his normal response. And a family member who was there came to me and they said, "Hey, I don't know if you realize, but maybe the way that I know this wasn't your intention, but the way that you said that, I think it really hurt your son's feelings." And the family member was like, "Hey, you can do what you want to do with it." And I was like, first of all, here was my response. I could have gotten mad and be like, "No, you don't understand." And I said to myself, "What value does it add if I get defensive in this situation?" So I stopped and I listened and I said, "Thank you for sharing that with me." And then I took a couple of days to process what was being said so that I could go, I can say thank you for sharing that with me and not agree with you. Or I can say thank you for sharing that with me and think about it. And the choice is mine whether I actually listen or apply to what the person said, right?
Mm,
But
yes.
I chose to listen, and then I went back and I called my son and I said, "Hey, I just wanna apologize. I don't know, I didn't come off the right way. That wasn't my intention. I need you to understand that this is how I really feel about this situation, and I really, just wanna apologize." And my son said, "Hey, thanks for that, but I'm good. I didn't even need that," right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter what he said. It mattered that I could listen so that now the family member doesn't feel like, "Well, I can't ever tell you anything. No, but you don't listen, you don't grow." If I can't hear that feedback, how am I gonna grow? So it's a challenge, and it took me a while to learn how to do it, but really when somebody gives you feedback, instead of jumping to criticize or having the receipts in your head that tell you, "No, this is why I did this, this, and this," maybe just listen first, and maybe you can respond later. So I would say, first of all, pause, be quiet, listen, then give yourself a space to process what's being said. And once you do that, then take appropriate action, whether it's doing something or doing nothing.
For a leader who recognizes they are the problem and has a damaged trust, what is the first most credible step toward repair? Can trust ever be fully restored?
Yeah. Trust, when you break trust, whether this is with your team or your family member, um, it's very difficult. I think about it like this. I think about trust in relationships like a bank account, right? You can deposit, you can keep depositing, and you do that by showing up and being consistent. You do that by encouraging the other person. You do that by doing what you say you're going to do. All of that helps people to develop trust, right? But then the interesting part is it doesn't take much to break that piggy bank open and destroy the trust. So the minute you're not consistent, the minute you don't do you say what you say you're going to do, the minute you get defensive and have to make up an excuse for why you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Like I've had leaders who've broken trust by doing simple things like by saying, "Hey, we're going to meet every month for a one-on-one," and then missing those one-on-one meetings or not scheduling them, and then they got mad because 4 months later, the staff member doesn't wanna show up to a one-on-one. And I said, "Well, why would they? Because you haven't valued it. They can't trust you." So in the book, I talk to you about there are ways that you develop and you grow trust. And it's by being consistent. It's by being clear in the things that you talk about and how if you're giving an assignment, being very clear with what you're asking for. If you're dealing with your husband or your wife or your children, it is your clarity with them that if I tell you this is what we're going to do and I tell you I need you to do something, and if you don't, I don't give you any consequences. They can't trust me. They can't trust that I'm going to follow through. And so I can't trust that they're going to do what they do. So there are tools in the book to show you how to develop this type of trust, whether it's at work or in life, so that you can really, really, really grow yourself as a leader. Because trust, people follow people that they can trust, right?
Yes.
Not what they say. And so the more that they trust you, the more people are willing to walk through and run through walls for you. And also the more they're willing to give you grace if it is a mistake, right? It's because they really trust you. But you don't want there to be a whole lot of mishaps because then it becomes very hard to trust you. And then it becomes extremely hard to get people to follow you.
Miss Shayna, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh, I wanna keep writing more books. I as an author, I
Yes.
have so this is my 7th book, and what's interesting is that, you would think after you write one that there's nothing else in the tank, and there's nothing else left to give, but the reality is I still have about 4 more books that I've been outlining, and I'm just trying to decide which one is next. And it's exciting because I love being able to share the experiences, the studies. There's a lot of in my book, a lot of studying and research that's been done on leadership and the prices that people have had to pay. I love sharing that knowledge to help people. So I'm looking forward to growing and writing even more books next year.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Shayna, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Hey, I say don't try to be like me, be like you. If you need to be what helped me, it wasn't about trying to be like someone else, it was really about how do I become the best version of myself? And what really helped me to become the best version of myself and push me to have accountability is to get a good coach. I will tell you that having someone who is an outside voice who can look at me and tell me where I need to grow to hold me accountable has allowed me to reach so many of my goals. I'm very excited that this book has reached bestseller. That was a goal. I'm very excited that I'm going to be doing a TEDx talk. That was a goal. I'm very excited I'll be getting a doctorate degree, an honorary degree next year. All of those were because I had coaches who could speak into and help me be accountable to doing the things that I said I was going to do. So if you are looking for a great coach, you can find me on my website, SheynaJamesConsulting.com. Or if you just can ask a friend who can coach you, but get someone who can look on the outside of you and hold you accountable and help you to fix the leadership problem in you. And if you can do that, you're going to be reaching your goals. And you don't want to be like me. You want to be like the best version of you.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for that advice, Miss Shayna. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Johnny?
Oh, I am a big John Maxwell fan.
Mm.
One of my favorite books, that he has written is I believe it's called The 15 Laws of Growth, and it's all about the power of growing yourself so that you can reach your desired outcome. He doesn't focus on goals. John Maxwell's focused on who you become. So he looks at how do you become more of the person that you want to be. And so I would highly recommend the John Maxwell book 15 Laws of Growth.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Shayna. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, and my book one I want to do in fifth season too. And please do listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Michelle, imagine a leader who has fully embodied your book's principles at the end of their career. What is their primarily legacy, and how is it different from the legacy of traditionally successful but poor leader?
Yeah. Well, I've actually had the pleasure of taking people through the principles of this book over 30 years and seeing them get to different stages in their career. And one of the what's different about them is the people who follow them. I've had so many of my clients who they tell me that people who were on their staff, they're still in touch with, even though they haven't been with the organization for years, that they're still close to them. And it's not just a personal closeness, but that they credit their growth in their careers to my clients because my clients fix the leadership problem. They resolve those things within themselves. And people don't forget that easily. So the legacy is the impact on the lives of the people you lead. It's really transformative.
Transformative indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Yes, please come the over and let's talk about all your books. So, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Yeah, you can find my any information about me on my website at shaynajamesconsulting.com. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at coachshayna.com or sorry, Coach Shayna. And then my books are available on Amazon as well.
Yes, people support Miss Sheyna James because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Sheyna, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel.
Monica people, see you soon.